So welcome to my YouTube channel. That's what we call The Good Life. It's July and there's lots of jobs you can be doing on your allotment. Now if you've not already subscribed to my channel, if you could please do so, because you'll get lots of helpful hints and tips all throughout the year from my allotment, my home garden, and from time to time my home kitchen. Now I'm at my allotment. It's a boiling hot day, but I'm going to go through some of the jobs I'm going to be doing over the coming month that I hope will be useful to you. Now one of the jobs, love it or hate it, and I've been doing loads of it today, so I'm really hot and bothered, is weeding and strimming. So most of my day has consisted of weeding and strimming, which is a job very boring but needs to be done. It doesn't have to be perfect, you just have to keep the worst of it down. Something that we found has helped us a great deal is getting a new strimmer. We've had many strimmers over the years, all of which have been completely temperamental and only worked when they wanted them to, which isn't very convenient when you only have a short window to get a job done. We spent more time trying to fix our last strimmer than we did actually strimming, I'm sure. So we've recently bought a Ryobi, which is absolutely fantastic. Can't fault it enough. It's actually on charge at the moment because we've just finished strimming, but I just wanted to show you the one we've got, and I wouldn't be without it. If you do want to get one of these, I can put a link up on the screen and one in the description for you to get one of those, but it is absolutely fantastic. So let's move on to some other jobs you can be doing. Now something that is quite important is to keep things netted. I've got my gooseberries netted, I've got my blackcurrants netted, and I've also got my blueberries over here netted, because we get a lot of pests over the allotment and a lot of them have wings and some of them have legs as well. So I cover most of my fruit and my brassicas with something called scaffolding netting, which is absolutely fantastic. I use it year after year. It comes on a big roll. It's really easy to cut off and to use. I used to buy some of the other netting years ago, but one of the chaps up at the allotment recommended it to me and actually gave me my first couple of bits, to be fair. He should have got a commission on that, I've got to say, because now I keep using it for everything. But if you want to get some, you can get it on a big roll off Amazon, so really easy, quite reasonably priced, and I just hold it up with things like either canes or hoops, just something to obviously, so it doesn't go right over it. Things like the gooseberries don't matter so much, I do just drape it over, but things like that, it could crush them and hurt them, so I put a few canes in there. So really handy. Moving on to more pests, I don't know about you, but I always get a bit of black fly on my French beans and runner beans and my broad beans, and I'm going to just show you a little trick that I do to keep it down. Now obviously you can use a spray, which if I have to, I will. I'm not embarrassed to admit that. So if I think that the pest is going to completely ruin my crop and my natural method of getting rid of it isn't going to work, then I will use the spray. I use bug clear and I water it down, so I don't buy the one already watered down because that works out far too expensive. I buy one that I can water down and I can spray on. I will put a link up on the screen and one in the description if you'd like to get that. But my first port of call is just to hose it off. So every few days I just hose the black fly off. And at the moment, I mean, it's not perfect, there are still a little bit of black fly on there, but they're not taking hold. You know, and your broad beans in particular can take a bit of a beating with a hose as well. And I just hose them off every few days. With my runner beans and French beans, if I'm honest, I do generally just rub them off with my fingers. I keep an eye on the leaves. I turn them over because they're usually on the underneath or on the stems, and now you're usually easier just to rub off with my fingers. You could put some marigolds on if you want to, but that's a really good way of keeping your black fly down. The other thing we're all having to do a lot at the moment is water. I don't know what it's like where you are in the world or in England, but in Kent it's been incredibly dry, and I'm having to water more than I would want to. I don't water every day, and I generally water, say, every 3 or 4 days, unless I've just planted something, and then I would water it every other day, or I've put some seeds in and then I would water it every other day. The exception to that would be if they're in pots. Now pots, you just have to water them when they're dry. If they're small pots, they're going to dry out a little bit sooner, and you might have to water them once or twice a day. But generally, things in the ground, I water every 3 days, unless of course it rains, because we have had the odd downpours. And we did have one quite a few days ago, and that meant I didn't have to water for a few days. But at the moment, I'm doing that. So again, water in moderation, but you definitely don't have to water every day, because I see some people watering too much and then they don't create the roots that go down deep into the soil. If you water too often, they will rely on surface water rather than getting roots down into the soil. Now harvesting, there are some things you can be harvesting, believe it or not. My broad beans are not quite ready. they're almost there. You're waiting for the pods to fill up, so they're almost another, I don't know, week or so or a few days, and I might be able to be getting those off. I've been harvesting loads of mange tous at home, absolutely loads of them, so lots of those have been going into my dishes. My chard here, I can start to harvest those off. As you can see, got some lovely chard here, absolutely fantastic. I've got some rhubarb at the top of the plot there, and I've also got some spring onions at home. So I've even got my first tomato, believe it or not. I took my first lot of gooseberries off about a week or so ago, and I've got another lot up there. You can take the gooseberries off now, or you can leave them on a little bit longer to mature. But the choice is yours really as to what you want to do with that. So let's see what else I've got up here. I've got my blueberries, which I'm really chuffed about. I think this is going to be my best crop ever. That's why it's so heavily netted. So I've got some beautiful blueberries on there. I've got some absolutely fantastic strawberries at home, and I ate my first raspberry today, which was quite exciting. I've even got my first courgette up here, which I've not harvested yet, but that can easily come off now. So there we go, my first courgette, which is absolutely fantastic. There we go. I swear I came up here a couple of days ago and it wasn't there. That's the thing with courgettes, they grow ridiculously quickly. So you do need to keep an eye on them as soon as they start coming. Now let's head back home, and I'm going to be giving you some top tips on looking after your tomato plants. Now I nearly forgot, but luckily enough I have fruit trees at home as well. You have something called the June drop. So when you've got things like apple trees and pear trees, quite often you get too many fruits on there and it can't sustain all those fruits, and you won't get decent sized apples or pears. So a lot of them have already dropped off, as you can see on the floor there, so nature has done a bit of the work for us. But some of these clumps of fruit here, you can see they're little ones. So what you do is you leave the two big ones on and you take the little ones off. Now these might drop off on their own during the month of June, but if you get the chance, just have a bit of a look around them and just take off the smaller ones, or if you've got a lot of clumps. And it is worth being a little bit brutal so that you get decent sized apples as well. So that one can definitely come off. So you are looking for the smaller one, and if you move up here again, the same thing. You've got some larger ones and then you've got two little ones. In fact, I'm going to take that one off as well. In fact, the ones that really need to come off almost just come off in your hands anyway. You can compost them. If I'm honest, I quite often just pop them on the floor and let them compost themselves. But it's a really simple job to do, a bit of a boring one, but well worth it because you'll get better sized apples as a result. Now let's move into the back garden and we can take a look at my tomato plants. So let's talk tomatoes, and I'm going to give you some quick top tips to help you get better tomatoes. Now as you can see, I've got a few ripening already, which is actually quite early at the beginning, but they're ripening absolutely beautifully. One of the things you need to do is you need to be constantly tying. You need to stake your tomato plants when they get bigger, and you need to be tying them up because otherwise they'll fall down, and we don't want that. The other thing is removing the side shoots. Now unless you've got two types, you've got the bush variety, you've got a cordon variety. Bush varieties you don't remove side shoots, but there are very, very few bush varieties, so just Google what variety you've got. It's more likely that it's a cordon variety. But you need to take the side shoots out because you do it for various reasons. One, because it helps prevent disease, and two, it helps your tomatoes grow better. So it's a win-win all the way through. So you've got to know what a side shoot is. You've got the main, these are really good examples because it's all really spread out. You've got a really long stem going up through the middle. You've got your leaves coming out of that stem, like so. You've then got your tomato shoots coming off, and then in some cases it's obviously just the bloom, like so. The thing you are removing is, if you go down the stem and across to a leaf, you've got a shoot coming out between a leaf and a stem, and that's the bit you remove. So I'm going to do a couple more just so you can see what you're doing. So this one's a little bit thicker. Look, oh, there we've got a really big one there. Look, I missed one, look. So yeah, again, you've got a stem going through the middle, you've got a leaf coming out, and you've got a shoot coming through the middle. Now you can actually plant these and get another tomato if you were short of tomatoes. I don't need any more tomatoes, so I'm not going to be doing that. Again, same thing there. Main stem, leaf, side shoot out the middle. The other thing I do, once I get completed trusses of fruit, so I've got a completed truss of fruit there, to speed up the ripening process, you remove the leaves below that truss of fruit. And again, it does one of two things. One, it helps speed up the ripening process, and 2, it gives more better air circulation, because it's the lack of air circulation that can sometimes lead to some of the diseases, in particular the dreaded tomato blight. It does mean at the end of the season you have a long stem with tomatoes coming off with hardly any leaves and just a few tufts of leaves at the top, which looks a little bit sad, but it means that your tomatoes are more likely to ripen and they're less likely to get disease. The other thing that it's worth doing, it's worth giving them a little bit of feed as well. Just a basic tomato feed, nothing fancy. I've got Tomorite here, but any kind of tomato feed. If you haven't got any and you want to get some of this, I will put a link up on the screen and one in the description. But most, even supermarkets, sell tomato feed now. I get the type that you water down, so I don't get the type that's already watered down or you just pour on there. I get the one where I just do a capful or 2 per watering hand, and then I water, because it goes an awful lot longer. You know, it lasts you an awful lot longer rather than just buying it already watered down. Now, I do hope you've enjoyed my video. If you'd like to buy me a coffee because you think you've got value from watching this video, we will put a link up on the screen and one in the description, and there will also be another opportunity on the screen to watch my next video of what to sow in July.